morning. This is Benjamin. I left off on my last video of my experiences at the Jackson Classification Center in Jackson, Georgia for the state of Georgia's prison system. I was next transferred down to Georgia, Reedsville, Georgia State Prison in Reedsville, Georgia. And so it's time to step into that storyline. Bus ride was an hour or two, something like that. I'm trying to recall memories from 50 years ago, so bear with me. But when I first arrived at Georgia State Prison, we were immediately taken to what we would refer in the prison slang was the fish tank. It was actually a small room with probably 25 bunk beds in it, and a very narrow walkway in between them, until they found out where they wanted to put us in the prison there at Georgia State Prison. And it was the White Horse of Georgia. It was the biggest, baddest prison in the state of Georgia back in the 1970s. Reputation there of things that went on there, it was mind-boggling, and they filtered down through the prison system. So me being a young kid at 21, weighing about 110 pounds, maybe 115, was very big, very young. So we were corralled into there, and then I know the first day was, just settling in. Second day, I made a friend there, and he was a Christian also, as far as I knew, and so we started talking to each other, and we fell into a routine of sharing the scriptures together and just trying to pass the day. The season of the time was early summer, so the heat was almost unbearable at times. And there wasn't much to do. Like I said, they're just getting us worked into the prison system there. So I remember it was a day or two later, I can't remember, I know it was within the first few days, Georgia State Prison had one of the worst uprisings they ever had there that I can remember, or I heard them talking about. Tried to find newspaper clippings, but I think a lot of it was hidden from the press. If you remember back in the 70s, there was a uprising over in Arizona State Prison, and that went on for days and days and days. There was another one back in Attica in New York. That was another major prison uprising that happened, and it lasted for days or weeks. But Georgia, it was, like I said, it didn't last very long, but it took some lives. There was one guard that was killed, about 3 inmates that were killed. And so when this took off, I consider it my welcome party from the devil for me being there. He just, trying to, and it was surprising to me how calm I was through all of this. I remember the smoke filtering through to us, and hearing the helicopters flying overhead at the prison, and everyone there was kind of on the edge. A lot of them were just had their backs up to the wall. Nothing really broke loose where we were. We just kind of tried to, maintain ourselves. Maybe I was just, trying not to pay attention to it. I just kept to myself. I remember one day I was laying there, or I wasn't laying there, I was actually walking, pacing the floor a little bit, and went to lay down on my bunk, and I had an experience here I want to share. As I laid on the bunk, my body hit the bed sheet and the bunk, but me, myself, my soul, my spirit kept going, and I fell through this dark hole, and it wasn't like I was falling, I was more like I was being pulled. I could feel this, whatever it was, this force pulling me into this darkened abyss, and I just call it that. That's just how I felt. something that had a hold of me that was pulling me into this. And I was kind of curious, so I cried out, verbally, and it's just saying, Jesus? Like I'm asking like who this is, and I was wondering if it was Jesus, so I called his name. And it kind of let loose a little bit. I went, And then I asked the question again, where are you taking me? And he says, and this spirit or whatever it was that had a hold of me says, I'm going to take you to see your God. And I went, well, that don't make sense to me. Because God already gave me a vision, and he gave me a purpose, and he gave me a goal, and a place to go and to do after all of this prison stuff is behind me. So I called out again. I said, Jesus, and it started to let loose on me. Then I kind of clued into what was happening, and I said, Jesus, help me. And all of a sudden, I've been like this, I don't know how long it was, but I know it's for some time since I lay down on my bunk and I found myself in this dark abyss. And it just seemed like I floated back up and snapped right into my body again. And I was startled. My eyes were dried out. And I was just like, what happened here? And so it took me a while to figure this out. I don't think I even figured it out that day, but I knew that God had this experience for me to show me that no one can pluck us from his hand. I don't care what being, what person. Paul said this, or somebody said, I think it was in Matthew, nobody can pluck us from this hand. Once we are saved, we're saved. It's not about, we look at people sometimes and we wonder, their characteristics don't show a Christian life. But when you're truly saved and you truly repent and you ask Jesus to save you, like I did way back when I was back up in that little town of Valparaiso, Indiana, it was sincere, and God heard me. And when he hears you and he told you, he's going to make you and help you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. I'm experiencing this. Even after all of what I did and everything else, God was still there with me, and he's going to work with me. He's going to make me into something better than I could ever do myself. So, back to my experience there in this fish tank. I was talking to myself, and I was just like, okay, I get this. You got me. I'm alright. Even through all of this uprising and so forth, what was going on, it was fine. I just knew that I was walking with God, and he's going to be with me through this prison term. So I remember for the next day or two, we were confined to this room, and they were feeding us in brown paper bags, sandwiches or whatever. And then about the second or third day, they took us down to the dining room hall in the prison. This was a very large room. There was a gun torrent up in the corner, where there was a guard up in there, and he had a gun with his shotgun, I guess, and or gun filled with rubber bullets. I don't know, but all I remember that I had inventory of where I was, and this was the first time I was in a dining hall since I got there, I believe. And then, but lunch went on well. We went through the line, got a tray. They filled it up with the prison food, call it that, but, free food, you can't complain, right? So went through that chow line, went to a table to sit down on, and so well, as I sat there was another man that was sitting next to me, who was on a round table, and so he's on the stool next to me there. And he kept looking up toward the line that was coming through, and he said something or mumbled under his lips that he's got a score to settle with someone. So I was kind of watching him out of the corner of my eye, and I could see his glance, and he finally zeroed in on the person that was coming through the line. As soon as he got to the table, this guy jumped up and started whooping on him. And so the rest of us at the table kind of backed away because the guards were coming in. And so they came in with their billy club and so forth and started whooping on both of them. And then over that, we heard a gunshot from the gun turret up in the corner of the dining hall. He fired over our heads up to the wall, and everybody was spread eagle on our bellies on the floor. You know, we don't want to get shot and caught up in this mess. So anyway, they carried the guy out, both of them, and then we got back to sitting down to eat our meal, and we didn't eat very long. We just said, all right, time's up, let's go. So I think I threw a chicken leg into my pocket. Can't remember, but I think I did. I think I took something in my pocket to take back with me because, you know, we're hungry. So we remained back into the fish tank area for, I don't know, some amount of time. Then we was moved into our dormitories. The dormitories consist of another large room with, you know, 100, 150 bunk beds in it. And that was the population of each cell dorm. I think they probably had 8, 12 of them in the prison system. And I consider it like being thrown into a den of lions. It's just, you know, every man's for himself in there. The guards don't go in there and stay inside there. They just throw all the inmates in there and lock the door. Then they let the head inmate there, the house man, I guess they call him. Yeah, I think it's called the house man. And he is in charge of keeping the peace, more or less, or keeping it down to a certain level. And he is in charge of assigning bunks and so forth. And anyway, when I first got thrown in there, then he took me to an empty bunk, and I was in the middle area. I wasn't up along the wall. I guess that's where all the senior inmates go. Anyway, I started my life there, and so when I first got put in there, it was probably in the middle of the day, so there wasn't very many people in there at the time. So I kind of settled in the best I could and got my stuff lined up underneath my bunk and made up my bed and so forth. And later in the afternoon, everybody came back in from the work details, and it got very noisy and very loud very quickly. And so, you know, when you're new, like I said, everybody's going to test you in there. They're going to see who you are and how tough you are. And one of the terms that they use is selling you a ticket. Selling you a ticket is challenging you to a fight. They want to see who you are. Are you going to fight for yourself? Do you want to take over where they're at and their level of the pecking order that's going on in there and so forth and so on? So, me? Well, I guess what they seen, the first thing that they noticed, it was this big green Bible I had. It was a New American Version or something, I don't remember exactly. But it was very prominent, and so then they think, oh wow, we got an easy one here. This is going to be easy pickings. You know, we got a Christian here that's going to think his God's going to protect him and watch over him, and he don't have nothing to fear. Well, let's see how long he lasts. And so the harassment starts. And so it wasn't so bad the first day, but as soon as they figure out that, you know, I'm holding truth to the Bible, I'm going to do what Jesus did and so forth. And he took a beating, so we'll see how much of a beating I can take. I think that's how it went over the next few days. The second day I was in there, they put me on chain gang and sending us out to work. And so I just fell in line, and they walked us out the door and down the stairs and out to the bus, and got to the bus and got on the bus. And then they took us out to some area near the prison, and we unloading from the bus, and we were handed our tools. Our tools consisted of yo-yos. You think of a yo-yo, something to play with, you know, you up and down, up and down, up and down. Well, no, that yo-yo was actually a sickle, about 5 feet long or so. It had a handle about as big as an axe handle, okay? It was nothing small or anything. It was large enough not to be broken. That was the reason for that. And then the other end was just a half circle sickle with a blade on it, straight blade on the end of that half circle, and you swing it back and forth, and that's what it means by yo-yo. It's going back and forth and back and forth. Anyway, so it was all fairly yo-yo, and when we just started like in a V, shape, as inmates lined up in like a V, and started walking down through this ditch and just weeding off the side of the road. They don't, like today, you see tractors out there with mowers on. Well, that's not how it worked back there in Georgia. You just get out there with the inmates and you just start walking down the road. And the guards were on their horses. They had horses there and so forth, staged before we even got there. So that was my experience first day. It was very hot, very humid, and me being locked up for as long as I was up till this point, I had no pigment in my skin. I was just very pale and white, and that sun just beat on me that day. And by the end of the day, as I got back to the dorm where I was at, my arms were burnt, blistered, and I mean blistered. I had big skin bubbles on my forearms and stuff. So anyway, treated them the best I could, and then so that was my introduction to the chain gangs in Georgia. Okay, so then the challenges started coming, and I had one inmate there, and he was a very large, brutal man, and he just kept harassing me and needling me and so forth. He wanted making me his little plaything, and so I just stood my ground. And so I remembered I got a letter. Well, I sent a card out. It was my first son's birthday coming up, and so I sent a birthday card out. And a few days later, the card came back, and my sister had had custody of him and so forth. And anyway, it was his first birthday, and I wanted to send him a card. Well, his card came back, and it was really kind of like unopened. It was addressed to her, to him, and so on the outside of the envelope, it was marked, refused, return to sender. I remember a song about that. Anyway, yeah, my family was not very keen about me communicating with my son, so that's hard to take. And anyway, so that's just some adjustments to take, for who I was and what was happening. So reality was starting to set in, and it's being pushed really hard. But Jesus was pushed even harder if you think about it. When they challenged him about who he was, the chief priest and the Pharisees, they just had him arrested and beaten him and whipped him until he had, opened up right down to his bones on his back and so forth. And then they crucified him. And Jesus said, if they hated me, they're going to hate you even more. So I understood what was happening. And so it was a test for me. Am I going to still confess Jesus before men? Like I did when I was in that cell in Atlanta. When that man came through and put his arms through the bars and asked me if I was saved, and I started confessing Jesus before the other man in that cell. This is the same thing that I was being tempted with there. Because I should have laid my Bible down and closed it up and just go ahead and stand my turf and whoop on a couple of people and just create my stand to be left alone. Or would I share God's love even with my enemies? That's the lessons I was learning within the prison. And it was a brutal case. This went on for several weeks, if I remember correctly. And then one day there was another homosexual that was freely, doing what he does within the dorm and so forth. But I think I was drawing too much attention to myself. I don't know what it was, but he came up to my bunk one day and he was just standing there looking at me, then he pulled out his shiv and he's ready to attack me. And this is, I want you to listen to this. Even in the midst of the battle, God can turn things around in a way that, you know, you wouldn't even think about. And this is what happened. When he did that, he exposed his weapon, and I just stood up off the bed, and I was just standing there, and I said, oh, what's going to happen now? Well, there was another man there that didn't like me any more than anybody else did, and he came up and he stopped him from attacking me. And so I went, wow, that's the enemy, that's God turning the enemy on himself, you know what I'm saying? And then the next day, I was coming back from the shower, and I'm halfway back to my bunk, and this guy that stopped this other man from attacking me came up and just cold cocked me a good one right across the jaw. I didn't see it coming, couldn't duck, nothing, and it split my lip clear up to my nose. And so I had to go up to the gate where we came in and out of the doormat, and I had told the guard I had to go to the infirmary to get sewed up, and he said, what happened? Slipped on bar soap. Can't be a snitch, you know. Yeah, I was alive, but so did, you know, that happened in Jericho. I believe there was a prostitute there that was lying to the officials of Jericho about the spies that were coming from. You understand what I'm saying? It's just, that's the only thing I think of to do at the time. And so, anyway, they kept me there. Then they had the houseman go down and get all my stuff, and so they took me and my stuff, and we walked up to the infirmary. They sewed me up, and then they took me back over to segregation this time and put me in a cell. And as I'm walking up to segregation, I could hear the cat calls and everything else coming from the segregation unit. And I was young, pretty looking, you know. It's just that's how society in prison works. So anyway, they put me in the cell, and so I kind of settled in for the night. The next morning, they came to get me and took me to their court in the prison system. And so the lieutenant is the judge, and he's going to dish out his discipline and what he thinks fit, and so forth. So I was talking to him, and he was asking me what happened, and I just made the same claim, you know. And he said he knew exactly what was going on. This wasn't his first rodeo, and neither was it mine, but I knew where I had to be and how I had to be and so forth. And I just told him, I said, you know, he said, you're going to have to fight back if you're going to survive here. If you don't do that, they're going to eat you up. Now I want you to think about something here. You know, yeah, you can do that. But I was on this 2-day for one. It was the sentence they gave me. If I was, you know, good behavior, got no write-ups, I wouldn't lose no time. And my goal from that point on was I'm going to be on my best behavior. I'm not going to do one extra day in this place. I don't want to do one extra day. And so I want to get out in 3 years. My prison sentence was 6 years. But I can be out in 3 from the day that I was arrested. So that was my goal. So anyway, I told the lieutenant, I said, you know, Bible tells me to turn the other cheek. I'm just going to turn the other cheek, so it's just the way it is with me. He said, okay, well, the best I can do to help you out is put you on segregation. And so be it. Put me in a cell. I'll do my time there. And so that's what I did. I went in there and put me in a cell, and at least this way I could do my time, get some night's sleep, and feel a bit secure about my time there in Georgia. And so that was my experience and my introduction to the Georgia State Prison. So I want you to think about this as I leave on this video here. Always remember that our life here on earth is to like Jesus. And we're going to be tested on that, and tested on it. God's testing us to see if we're going to learn about this or not. When we go through troubles and tribulations and trials, what's our reaction to that? Well, it was very clear to me that God was real. He was working in my life. You know, all the things that happened to me in Jackson, and my visions, Him touching my heart and giving me a new heart of flesh and not a heart of stone, and healing that other inmate's leg, and so on and so forth. I can't deny these things happened. And so, but it was my own little bubble here in my relationship with God and who He was and how powerful He was. So nothing happens to us that He's not aware of. He's already seen our lives from the beginning to the end. He's seen them before the earth was even formed. He had us in His plan. So the best thing we can do is read the Word, follow it, let it ingrain itself within us, let the Holy Spirit indwell us, and learn to listen to His voice, follow His guidance. Sometimes we can't sense or hear or feel God at all, but He still wants us to do what we need to do. That's what a father does with his son. He wants to raise him up to be a good son, you know, someone that would listen to him and follow him and His guidance and so forth, so we don't end up where I ended up at. So that's my life goal, my life mission. And sometimes it takes others longer than others. It took me a long time to get where I'm at today. And today is, you know, ending my twilight years. And so I want to make the best of them. I'm sharing these videos because the story that I'm sharing in these videos, I do not want to take with me to the grave. My story needs to be told. Because I know I'm not the only one. I'm not the only inmate that experiences like this. And, you know, I don't know where they're at, but I know they're out there. I'm not alone. I'm not a single lone soldier here. I'm just a nobody trying to tell everybody about Jesus. That's who I am. I'm nobody special. I'm just a single voice in the midst of this corrupt and crazy world that we are walking through. We don't live here. This isn't our residence. Our residence, if you're a Christian and born again and following Jesus, our residency is in heaven. We're just transits walking through this world, trying to tell everybody about Jesus. So I don't want my life to mean nothing. I want to leave something behind. A path that I walked is a hard path. Jesus said it wouldn't be easy. We need to walk this path that He designed for each and every one of us. We each have our own story. We each have our own path we're walking on. I've survived the path that I've walked on for the last 69 years. I've survived all of it, all the hardships, all the trauma, all of the things that should have killed me, but I'm still here. Why? Because God's got a mission for me. And I do a lot of prison ministry. I go down to a classification unit south of where I live, about an hour and a half. I drive that once a week on Tuesday nights, and I go and talk with the guys. We share and pray together and share our hard times, our bad times, our good times, our praises. We should encourage one another, and that's what I'm hoping to do with these videos, to encourage you. So please like and share. I believe my email's in there somewhere. I'm not a real video editor or anything. It might come, somebody might step up and help me with this, but for the time being, this is what I have, and this is what I want to share. So God bless you all. Jesus loves you, and never forget, God's always with you, always, no matter where you're at. God bless you, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye for now.